All right, so we're going to talk about trig ratios of special angles today. When our last lesson was the trig ratios as a whole, what they were. So what we're going to look at is on the unit circle, if we were to say that from the center here to this edge being one radius, right, had a value of 1, so our R value would equal 1, then we know that this point would be 1, 0. Okay? And by the same token, since this would also be R equals 1, this point would be 0, 1. Then this point here would be negative 1, 0. And this point down here would be 0, negative 1. Okay. So basically this is going to, R is going to be 1 no matter what the angle. And then X and Y are given by our points. Okay, so I know that this is 180 degrees here on my unit circle, so that means my X is negative 1, my Y is 0, and R is 1. So sine of 180 being Y over R would then be Y0, R1, so 0 over 1, which is 0. Okay. Cosine of 180 being X over R would be negative 1 over 1, which is negative 1. Okay. Cotangent of 270. Okay. 270, we're coming down here. Here's 270. Okay. So 270 degrees. X is 0, Y is negative 1, R is still 1. Cotangent is X over Y. So that's going to be value-wise 0 over negative 1, which is 0. Okay, tangent of 90 degrees. 90 degrees is up here. Okay. X is 0, Y is 1, R is 1. So tangent of 90 degrees being Y over X would be 1 over 0, which is undefined. Okay, can't divide by 0. Okay, cosecant of pi over 2. All right, well, if you'll recall from our earlier studies, pi over 2 is 90 degrees. Cosecant, which goes with sine, it's actually the reciprocal of sine, would be R over Y. So then in this case that would be 1 over, and then Y here is 1. Secant of 2 pi. Secant, remember, is the reciprocal of cosine, so that's going to be R over X. And then for 2 pi, X and Y are 1 and 0, so this is going to be 1 over 1, which is 1. Okay. Okay, so find the trig ratios for theta equals 45 degrees. All right, so we have a point somewhere on that line, and we're going to come down. Okay, we know from our studies of right triangles in geometry that a 45-degree angle, triangle would have two 45 degrees, and the side lengths would be the same. So we're going to just use the unit 1, and then the hypotenuse would be the side length times the square root of 2. So in this case, that's just going to be square root of 2. So we have x equals 1, y equals 1, and r equals square root of 2. So the sine of 45 degrees, because it's y over r, would be 1 over the square root of 2, which we would multiply the numerator and denominator by square root of 2. So we get the square root of 2 over 2. Okay. Cosine of 45 degrees, being x over r, would also be 1 over the square root of 2, which means it's square root of 2 over 2. Right, tangent of 45 degrees would then be x over y, which would be 1 over 1. which is 1. Cosecant of 45 degrees, well, we do the reciprocal and we get the square root of 2 over 1, which is the square root of 2. Secant of 45 degrees, we do the reciprocal of cosine, and we'll get the square root of 2 over 1, which is the square root of 2. And finally, cotangent of 45 degrees will be x over y, which now I realize I got to make a correction over here. Okay, tangent is y over x. Values didn't change because it was 1 and 1. So again, x over y is going to be 1 over 1, and we get 1. Okay, let's try another one. Sine of 30. So back in the day when we were studying geometry, we said a 30, 60, 90 right triangle would have the following, across from the 30 degrees would be our S, right? So we'll call that 1. And then across from 60 degrees would be S square root of 3. So we're just going to call that square root of 3. And then across from the 90 would be 2 times S. So in this case, 2. Okay. So we have our X, our Y, and our R. Okay, so sine of 30 degrees, Y over R, is 1 over 2. Cosine of 30 degrees is going to be the square root of 3 over 2. Tangent will be 1 over the square root of 3, which we multiply the numerator and denominator by square root of 3, and we get square root of 3 over 3. Cosecant of 30 degrees is the reciprocal of sine, so that's going to be 2 over 1, or simply 2. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so 2 over the square root of 3, which we multiply numerator and denominator by square root of 3. And we get 2 square roots of 3 over 3. Okay. Finally, cotangent, being the reciprocal of tangent, would be square root of 3 over 1, which is the square root of 3. Alright, trig ratios for 60 degrees. Again, we have a point. We make our right triangle. Right triangles are proportional. Across from 60 degrees, it was the square root of 3. Across from the 30 was 1. Across from 90 is 2. So sine of 60 degrees would be square root of 3 over 2. Cosine of 60 degrees is going to be 2 over, let me back that up, it's going to be 1 over 2. And tangent will be square root of 3 over 1, or simply square root of 3. Okay, cosecant would be 2 over the square root of 3, so we'll multiply both by the square root of 3. And we get 2 square roots of 3 over 3. Secant of 60 degrees. Secant is the reciprocal of cosine, so that's going to be 2 over 1, or simply 2. And finally, cotangent of 60 is the reciprocal of cotangent, so we get 1 over the square root of 3. We multiply both by the square root of 3, and we get square root of 3 over 3. Okay, cofunctions have equal values when their angles are complementary. For example, sine of 60 degrees equals cosine of 30 degrees, because 60 plus 30 is 90. So sine of theta and cosine theta are cofunctions. That is, sine of theta is equal to cosine of theta minus cosine of 90 degrees minus theta. Okay, so because that's how we find the complement, is subtracting it from 90. So cosine and sine are cofunctions. Secant and cosecant. And tangent and cotangent. Okay, so the trig ratios for the special angles can be easily memorized by organizing them in a table. All right, so one of the things that we just talked about was the cofunctions, right? So if we know that sine of 30 degrees is 1 over 2, then we know that cosine of 60, its complement, is also going to be 1 over 2. Similarly, if we know that the cosine of 30 degrees is square root of 3 over 2, then we know that the sine of 60 degrees is also square root of 3 over 2. Tangent, of course, is going to be the y over x, so that's going to be 1 over the square root of 3, which will simplify to be square root of 3 over 3. Okay. And then here it's going to be square root of 3 over 1, or simply square root of 3. That just leaves us our 45 degrees, or pi over 4, and that's not terrible because we know that sine and cosine, well, 45 is its own complement, so if we can remember that sine is square root of 2 over 2, then cosine will also be square root of 2 over 2, and then tangent being square root of 2 over square root of 2, or 1. Okay, so that's an easy way to do that. If you'll remind me in class, I'll show you a way you can use your hand to help you remember those same things. So find the following: sine of 30 degrees, 1/2. Tangent of pi over 3, that's going to be square root of 3. Cosine of pi, that we had earlier. So cosine of 180, remember, was pi, so that's -1. Cosine of pi over 4, there's pi over 4, it's square root of 2 over 2. Secant of pi over 6. Okay, well, secant goes with cosine. It's the reverse, so that would be 2 over the square root of 3, which we multiply both by the square root of 3, and we have 2 square root of 3 over 3. And then cotangent of 90 degrees. Okay, well, remember, cotangent 90 degrees, x and y were 0, 1. Cotangent is x over y, so that's 0 over 1, or simply 0. All right, that's pretty much it for lesson 1-5.